Welcome back to what I believe is episode 5 of the John Daigle Show, where we go wherever the wind takes us. And in case you hadn't heard about yesterday, yes, my soccer team won 4-2, and the only 2 goals I allowed were deflections. Thank you very much. I appreciate the compliments. But more importantly, it was National Tequila Day. Snuck up under all of us. And so, quickly before we begin, an easy recipe. 3 ingredients, not much dicing, if any, needed. Because in this glass, I have 4 National Tequila Day, which happened, an ounce and a half, 2 ounces, whatever you want, of white tequila. Whatever you are using, this is Casadores, but whatever you want to use at home, ounce and a half white tequila, and we're just going to make a quick ranch water. The only difference, by the way, in ranch water and tequila soda is the lime juice. That's it. Proper ranch water should come with Topo Chico if you order it at a bar, and they will give you the entire bottle. That's what makes the markup in price if you are marked up. But if not, check your receipt because they're ripping you off. You shouldn't be charged $2 to $4 more just for a full bottle of Topo Chico as opposed to getting regular sparkling water, mineral water with your ranch water. Bars may rip you off. But anyways, ounce and a half, 2 ounces of tequila, whatever your tolerance is, your favorite Blanco tequila, and then an ounce of lime juice, which, rule of thumb, is usually 1 lime, a lime and a half at most. That's typically the good gauge. And then the rest of the way, you can fill with your favorite sparkling water. In this case, I have a triple berry combination I'm about to pour in here. Just some extra sparkling water I had. And then you stir it around. And that is quite literally it. We are now drinking ranch water together. This one, I don't know if that's going to look good because it's berry water. But that's a ranch water. That's a berry ranch water. It's actually amazing. I should try lime and berries more. That's incredible. Anyways, though, now that you have your cocktail to drink for National Tequila Day, let me talk to you. Because tonight is my Pros versus Joes draft. Pros versus Joes, of course, a league on FFPC. 7 drafts with 12 people in each. 6 pros, 6 quote-unquote Joes. Last year, I think I got stuffed in a Joes league with Chad Schroeder, who I think is probably the best redraft player ever, high-stakes player. So the Joes, it just depends what they're qualified as. You can get some tough leagues. Tonight, I'm in a fun league with friends Shane Hallam, Josh Larkey, Kevin Williamson, Joshua Durham, which I believe is the co-owner of Durham and Durham from 2-3 years ago with a top 2 finish in Pros versus Joes. David Lynch, as always, joining us. Appreciate you, David. Try that ranch water. It's beautiful. It actually tastes good. And what I'm showing you right now is the historical Pros versus Joes standing. Everything we're going to use on today's show for show prep, not just for Pros versus Joes, but as I always stress during the Best Ball Happy Hour, big picture takeaways. Do as I say, not as I do. So let's just say you are already saying, I don't want to be here because I am not in Pros versus Joes. It's actually just a 1 quarterback tight end premium league, right? With a flex. So we can flex tight ends since they get 1.5 per reception. If you're in that kind of league, I'm drafting from the 108 tonight. Use it as prep. Big picture takeaways always. Since otherwise we're just dwindling it down to minute decisions that probably don't help many people. But you can always use information if you use it correctly. This is the all-time standings the great Sigmund Bloom, who I need to actually go stay in his guest room in New Orleans at some point, leading the way in pros versus Joe's points. Jared Smola, always sharp from Draft Sharks, good friend here at the top. Jake Seeley, Darren Armani. All this data today, by the way, that we are using is courtesy of fantasymojo.com. You see it here at the top. Darren Armani is the gatekeeper of all FFPC data, which I'll show you some. I will give you a taste in a bit. But right now, for full exposure, let's go down to Daigle. 163 all time, but only 3 entries so far. No big deal. This tonight will be my 4th. And more importantly, we are getting better. We are learning the format. At least that's what I want to tell myself. 78th, that was a year. Was that Lamar Jackson's injury year? I know it all seems like they're injury years, but I believe this is the year I had Christian McCaffrey and Lamar Jackson from the 101, and both, of course, got injured. It can't happen if you're high capital players. Both of them get injured. No excuses, though. Do better. 36 overall 2 years ago. And then, of course, we brought it in with a 12th overall finish last year. Looking to improve, looking to get not only a league win, but an overall pros versus Joes win. So that's for the history. The other data, of course, that we need to dive into, though, is what we're trying to do. And let's start with last night's draft board. Yes, a very small sample, but at least since I'm studying from the 108, and again, big picture takeaways, if you're just curious at this time of the year, what a 1 quarterback, 20 round, tight end premium PPR league looks like, which I actually think probably quite a few people draft in, even in their home leagues. This is a most recent high stakes board. That is a really good ranch water. And I will be taking over from the 108, Petrie and Larson, right behind Overzet. I'm not expecting Austin Eckler to fall there. That's the oddball draft where Hubbard, high stakes player, takes Bijan Robinson 101 or RB1, takes a stand. Whatever, that's fine. Also, the great Scott Hansen, fantasy guru, takes a stand. Jamar Chase. As you've heard me talk about time and time and again, I have Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and Tyreek Hill all in the same tier. So whatever. Grab one. I don't care. Not even worth discussing. Fractional points separate them. We only live on this earth on average 78 years. Who cares about arguing about fractional points? Just take one. But this is the idea of the group of players I'm looking at. Now, if we can scoot over to what has also happened in the $200,000 to the top FFPC best ball tourneys, because that's what Pros versus Joes is. It's a best ball tournament. Thus, I feel like I can use the last 3 days, probably even the last month, but the last 3 days in particular, since we've gotten pertinent news to see adjusted ADP. And for instance, again, all at fantasymojo.com. Darren Armani, good friend, the gatekeeper of FFPC data. I can see that this is the consensus pick at 108 overall in this type of format the last 3 days. It at least gives me a good idea of what I'm looking at. Bijan, as I mentioned, I'm expecting to be there. Would I take him over A.J. Brown? I don't know. We can all find that out tonight because I'll be live streaming my draft at 10 p.m. Eastern, live on this very channel. Like and subscribe if you want to get to a notification. But that's what we're trying to figure out right now. And so, okay, if we have our handful of players now that we want to draft, that we know will at least be there, and we need to start dwindling them down, let's get to what we should be looking at. And here we have winning boards Again, courtesy of fantasymojo.com. So I can look and I can see who has won in this format in general, but I'm looking at the winning boards of the last couple of years. And we start with GOAT District. My good friends, JD. I don't know if Theo Grimminger, a player profiler, actually was a tag team with JD in this particular draft. But the GOAT District, this draft right here, from the 108, won this league, won Pros versus Joes last year. And so we're literally looking at a winning roster and trying to catch trends. In this case, as everyone's figured out, even in your home leagues, the winning trend for Pat Crane's $2 million underdog best ball winner, the winning trend for home leagues, the winning trend for FFPC was to get the dip on Austin Eckler and Saquon Barkley. That was the trend. You just understood that Saquon Barkley was a first-round player, and you took him in the second round. Kind of like what I think is happening with Tony Pollard right now. A first-round player who is going in the second round. More on that in a bit. But you also got to get a little lucky. You have to understand the structure and then get lucky, especially in larger leagues. And in this case, by understanding the structure, I mean tight end premium, thus George Kittle. And every board I've studied so far, typically even elite tight end drafters, let's go to Travis Kelce, for example, are going 3 tight ends. So that's a strategy that I'll probably use tonight, even if I go Mark Andrews at 108 tonight, who's usually going at the end of the second round. If I take my shot and I go Mark Andrews for a tight end premium league here at 108 in the second round, I'm still going 3 tight ends. I believe everything I've seen, that's the best strategy. Again, you'll find that out at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight. But understanding the structure, George Kittle, Evan Ingram, tight end premium. But then getting lucky, and that we saw George Kittle obviously explode in 4 starts at the end of the year without Deebo Samuel. Not only led the entire NFL in receiving touchdowns over the last month of the season, but those 4 games without Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, team high 24.3% target share and 17 fantasy points per game. And now think about what he did with Deebo Samuel on the field. Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle all played 186 snaps together, including the postseason. 6 games together. And in those 186 snaps, with all those players healthy and on the field, George Kittle's target share dipped to 10.5%. He averaged 5.5 PPR points per game. He was basically a useless player at his capital. And that's what's odd is that I understand his tight end premium, but right now George Kittle's ADP suggests that everyone's chasing what he did without Deebo and are not taking into account his splits with Deebo on the field. So he's actually a little bit of a fade for me at his current ADP across formats, no matter where you're drafting, FFPC included. But again, this is reviewing last year, understanding the structure as JD and the GOAT District did, and then getting lucky. That's one takeaway. Second place was, again, who I call and consider the best redraft high-stakes player of all time, Chad Schroeder. Cocktails and Dreams, I believe his team name is always called. And he took the approach that is obviously viable. I was at the 101, I believe 4 for 4 is me. I don't think that's Paulson. I think this is me with the 12th place finish last year. Yeah, because I took 2 quarterbacks, one being Baker Mayfield. Yeah, this is definitely me last year at the 101. But the second, I got 12th place. The second place finish, Chad, drafted from the 106 in my league. So that's actually pretty incredible that 2 people finished top 12 from the same draft. It's possible. You might see it tonight. But Chad went tight end premium. Travis Kelce, the Ravens offense discounted last year. Remember Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews for injuries the year prior. So he got what he targeted in tight end premium and taking that structure and approach and trying that on. Jalen Waddle, Darnell Mooney, just stacking wide receivers. You get Justin Fields as a quarterback who outperformed Joe Burrow in best ball as well, so he didn't have to make that start-sit decision over the second half of the season. And then Garrett Wilson, so late. Garrett Wilson, of course, and starts on the field without Zach Wilson. Garrett Wilson was the wide receiver 10 in points per game. So basically did well with anyone but Zach Wilson because go figure, it was Zach Wilson. So it can happen. 2 players from the same draft. Let's go back one more year to 2021 and just review once more what happened here. Jungle, I believe, was the Jungle Cats, I believe, was the 2021 champion from the 101. Christian McCaffrey. And remember, at this time, Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor were considered in a tier of their own. Let me exit this. There you go. Christian McCaffrey, DK Metcalf, rookie Justin Jefferson, who that's the year Justin Jefferson actually didn't start because, of course, Zimmer didn't start him. But he eventually, it only took until week 3, I believe, entered the starting lineup. But again, if we're looking at big picture, just trying to figure out what strategies everyone's using, it's again 3, in this case 4 quarterbacks. Only 2 tight ends for Jungle Cats in this spot, but really just the best player in fantasy football, Christian McCaffrey. And then one more, also from 2 years ago. And we're going to look at, I believe it was Smola, who won this one. With Tyreek Hill, Aaron Jones, Terry McLaurin, Robert Woods. That's a Rams Robert Woods, who, remember, that was the year. Where did Cooper Kupp go in this draft? Cooper Kupp. I believe this was the year. It was a hot take to want Cooper Kupp over Robert Woods. Some sharp players did have him over Woods. I had them in the same tier, which is why I do best ball tiers on the site, because I like to go back and review them as well the next year and see what I got wrong in my process. And I do remember changing the tiers at one point to have Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp in the same tier. And tiers, of course, means the bottom player in that tier can outscore. It's in his range of outcomes to outscore the top player. Like right now, my tiers at the site, I have Garrett Wilson in the second tier, the same one as Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown as the wide receivers 5 through 7. Because, again, your tiers should include – the rankings don't matter. Your tiers should include the last player in that tier outscoring the first player. Is that possible? So we're asking, can Garrett Wilson outscore Stephon Diggs or A.J. Brown? Of course he can. A full season without Zach Wilson? Of course he can. So I have them in the same tier. But it was a hot take to have Kupp over Robert Woods. Kupp, of course, scorched the earth to the ground. Plus Justin Jefferson. I believe this is also the year, the first year, Go Bills, who are now back-to-back champions of the FFPC main event, a team of 2 to 5, I believe. They use a couple people for Bare Knuckles draft, which Bare Knuckles in Vegas, for those that don't know, a live draft that happens immediately following the mixer where we all get together at Planet Hollywood on Thursday night. The live draft happens afterwards, and Bare Knuckles means it's a fist fight because you can't use ADP. There is no laptops. There's just a board, and that's how you see players. So you have to memorize the first 10 rounds and the last 10 rounds. Everyone uses teammates for the most part. I think there are only 1 or 2 sickos left out there that take the whole board for themselves. But Go Bills has won the main event, the $2,000 entry, $1 million to first in back-to-back years. After Skywalker won it in back-to-back years. So tells you how tough those leagues are, but also shows that it's skill and luck. You still need the skill portion of it. As Historical Anomaly points out, Schroeder did 0 RB in SFB, took his running back in 9th round. There you go. And that's also, we reviewed very quickly last week. We reviewed my SFB draft. And that's kind of the funny thing about quirky leagues like SFB, where I would say even like this in a tight end premium. It's not like your rankings change altogether. Everyone overreacts to projections in those types of formats. Because in SFB, whenever you get a quarter of a point for rushing first downs and pass and receiving first downs, 0.1 more points for passing first downs, of course your projections show that receiving running backs in particular, actually, because they're running and catching for first downs, they're projected higher. But like David Montgomery is not going to outscore, let's use Garrett Wilson, for example, again. David Montgomery's not going to outscore Garrett Wilson. David Montgomery's not going to outscore Devontae Adams. Let's do that. A player who's falling. And so I think people usually tend to take those projections a little too much to the extreme. Austin Eckler's not going to, shouldn't fall anyways, to the 4th round just because of these odd projections. So that's the way SFB is always quirky, and I think there are numerous ways to attack it. It's based entirely on your own board. So anyways, that's the handful of players we're looking at for tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern. I believe my strategy, we can go ahead and cut this off. We don't need a 2021 board anymore. I believe my strategy from the 108 will be best leftover player. That's pretty simple. Whether it be Eckler, Christian McCaffrey may fall there, a wide receiver. I'll nitpick through my tiers, but I have A.J. Brown ahead of Stephon Diggs. So I will take A.J. Brown ahead of Stephon Diggs if they're both there, which I think they will be at 108. And then on the comeback, I think that's where we start looking purposely for tight end premium. I think that's where we start looking at Mark Andrews at 108 and then see who comes back. But honestly, even waiting on that Dallas Goedert, Pat Freiermuth tier, I'm okay with that too in this format. And if I use one to flex, great. If not, I still at least, assuming Andrews comes back to me, have another option, a strong option, elite tight end that I took in the first 2 rounds with high capital, as if they're going to matter every single week. And remember, Andrews is 10.3 points per game last year. Yes, far cry from the 14.1 he averaged the year prior, career high mark. Very different as the tight end 3 in points per game. But at least we know he was the tight end 2 in points per game in the 11 full starts Lamar Jackson made. Andrews' average increased 11.8 points per game. TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, even if you want to put him as the tight end 5, whatever. They don't have the ceiling over a full season, and they've proven as such to take down Travis Kelce. But Mark Andrews does. And Mark Andrews is the only one out of all the elite tight ends that can take down Travis Kelce, in my opinion. And that's why I'm trying to factor him in. And then maybe we get a little frisky and we start the Ravens stack, even if Jalen Hurts is on the board. But if I go A.J. Brown and Hurts and Lamar are there at 3rd round, 8th spot, let's start tinkering. I have to start thinking about it. Anyways, though, some quick house cleaning before we get out of here, because a couple news items have happened in the past 24 hours. That's amazing. I'm going to make that more often. First off, Kadarius Toney, obviously injured. Sounds like it's going to come down to week 1, and if he's even available then. My issue has never been, well, my issue has always been with Kadarius Toney being too hyped based on small samples. I don't want to play a game against many, many other people and only base everything on small samples. And that's what we're doing with Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney being good against the Cowboys was the worst thing to ever happen in his career, because now we are basing all of his projections just on one game, the only game in his entire career he's been healthy for. But yes, 23% target per route run rate with Kansas City last year, although with injuries to Juju, Sky Moore, all around, MVS at some points, Kadarius Toney still never led the Chiefs in routes run in any game. Just doesn't matter. My issue is that we are still playing a game. And right now, the game allows us, it has allowed us anyway, to this point, prior to Kadarius Toney's injury on special teams, returning punts. The game has allowed us to say, Kadarius Toney's being drafted at 70 overall, whereas Sky Moore is going after pick 100. Sky Moore, of course, who was being drafted last year at 121 overall. Roughly the same spot. But the Chiefs wide receiver room, as we all know, especially with the addition of Rashee Rice, also without Juju Smith-Schuster, is an ambiguous situation. MVS is the only one guaranteed to start because of what they paid him in his contract extension last year, and the fact he has a double-digit million cap hit this year. MVS is on the boundary. So we don't think Kadarius Toney starting in two wide sets already knocks him down. And then we also have to remember, again, it's an ambiguous situation. We don't know. And so to have, maybe not to have the hubris, but to use your ego when we're playing a game and say, I'm sure this player is 5 rounds better than this player, that's ridiculous, especially when Kadarius Toney has never been 5 rounds better than the person behind him. And so that's the argument against Kadarius Toney, is that we're playing a game, and the game is letting us have Sky Moore, who we are expecting to start at the very least in 3 wide sets, but he was also used in 2 wide receiver sets in OTAs. The game is letting us have that 2 wide receiver starter 4 to 5 rounds later over the player people have hubris in a ambiguous situation. That's how you play the game. You don't draft Kadarius Toney because it doesn't make sense. So that's why we should be higher on Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, because rooms are giving us discounts on unknown situations. And yes, anomalies. That's what's happening right now, because these tournament formats are filled with sickos, and so ADP changes overnight. Easily. One bit of news makes people overreact. It's a life lesson, really, to not react, pause, think about the situation, rather than joining the sheep and reacting to everything. So what's going to happen now, we already know. We know how humans react. Kadarius Toney will dip, and he'll dip because he's not going to play for the next month. We're not going to hear anything about him except that he's rehabbing. Kadarius Toney will fall back to where Sky Moore is going. And yes, Sky Moore will start flipping and going ahead of Toney. And that's when we then play the game, right? We've been playing it right all along so far. We play the game, and then we start taking Toney because he will be going 3 to 4 rounds after Sky Moore. Also, why best ball is the dumbest thing we do, because we're just playing stocks. We're just dipping and playing the game. So right now, do not draft Kadarius Toney. Don't draft Kadarius Toney the last 2 months of your life. If you can retroactively make that decision, draft Sky Moore. Eventually, Sky Moore will surpass Toney. That's when you can draft Toney at a major discount. I still believe in Rashee Rice. I will have 0 Justin Ross. I don't even think Justin Ross will make the final roster, honestly. So if you want to draft Justin Ross in the last round of 20-round drafts, though, it's the 20th round. I've made dumber picks. I drafted Wayne Gallman 2 years ago in the last round. Who cares? It's a last-round pick. Good luck. Godspeed. And from the news this morning to close out with, Saquon Barkley signing a 1-year, $11 million guaranteed deal. Barkley had dropped recently all the way to the back of the 3rd round. He was dipping, thinking he was going to hold out. But honestly, even in what he said before the team did not offer him a long-term deal, mentioning that if he has to show up, if he has to play to prove himself, that was him suggesting that he's going to be there week one no matter what. So, in my opinion, he shouldn't have dipped anyways. Josh Jacobs is the one who has always sounded like this entire time that he's going to fall on the sword for this position. That Jacobs is the one who's actually just not going to show up. He's just going to hold out this entire time. As we look at this tweet right here. Dave Kluge, for some reason, showing up with this feed because all he does is tweet. 10.1 million fully guaranteed, 2 million signing bonus. Last year, of course, incentives equal to what he recorded career high marks. Career high 11 touchdowns, and the first time Saquon Barkley was healthy for every game. So now what happens is we can get back to fading Saquon Barkley because he's going to get back to his original ADP. First, second round turn. And again, that's not where we should take Barkley. Yes, 11 touchdowns last year, but a career high mark. Yes, led his own team in targets with 76, 71 to the next closest player. But think about all the additions they made, Darren Waller included, on offense. So that target share, 14.5%, the fourth highest mark of all running backs, that can't carry over. Barkley can't get there and lead the team in targets again, given that they made all the additions around him just so he doesn't lead the team in targets again. That's not the approach they want to take. And so we can't put these career high projections back onto him and say he's going to be healthy again, he's going to do career highs again. No, that's not how this game works. You let him get to the first or second round turn based on this news, and then you go back to fading him and taking running backs who have chances to surpass him. Not even Jonathan Taylor, but Nick Chubb, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry even though Derrick Henry never goes ahead of Saquon Barkley, I have him ranked ahead of Saquon Barkley. I'll be at the same tier. Now is the time where we don't want Saquon Barkley because we can go back to assuming he does not lead the team in targets again. Remember, tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, live draft, pros versus Joes. If you want to see a mock draft, basically, if you want to see a high-stakes draft in real-time action. Also, tomorrow, for the Most Accurate Podcast live feed, 2 p.m. Eastern, a time change, just for this week. Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Jason of the Fantasy Footballers, my good friend Jason, is jumping on to do a live mock draft with myself and John Paulson, if you would like to check that out. And then I'll remind you many more times down the road, but we are getting back into high-stakes season. And so I will be doing a live. I'm taking up a Friday night just for you. I'll be doing a live $2,000 fantasy football draft on August 4th, 9 p.m. Eastern for everyone. If you want to mark that on your calendar right now. Daigle's $2,000 fantasy football draft, just to show you, especially when the calendars turn to August and you start prepping even harder for your home drafts, just to show you what the high-stakes streets draft boards look like so you can continue getting ready for your own drafts. Until then, until tonight, really, we'll probably have more ranch water, to be honest. I'm going to make another one. Remember, be a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you tonight.